Do you have an opening statement or is it just a video? Watch this awesome YouTube video.
I know.
Is it 3 minutes or 2 minutes? 2 minutes, okay. Well, now I gotta find a new YouTube video.
Better hurry, you got 2 minutes.
1 minute.
Better think fast.
Have you seen the one where the goat's running and then he's carrying it? That's really quick, it's like 15 seconds.
See the one with the cats.
Like,
Already cats.
already
That's
gets.
me. Yeah. Just show that video and drop the link.
If the green light's on, it's on.
Yeah. We don't want.
So you can push the little button and it'll turn it off. There you go. So when you start whispering, they can actually hear it. Yeah. So don't whisper anything bad because it'll be, we can hear you. Whatever. We can hear you. Then Jamie's beginning Facebook post, we can hear you.
15 seconds.
Stop. What's that mean?
30 more seconds.
30 more seconds.
I know how this works.
And they did not stop.
They did not stop. I practiced my intimidating face.
When something comes flying your way, that means stop.
Arsenal here.
When
I
Michael
can
starts
gavel
throwing
people.
things at you,
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah, not the audience, but the people up front. You know it's bad. Yeah.
Well, this is a good number, and it's less than the number of Democratic people, candidates
Yeah,
on the debate
that's
stage
true.
tonight. They're gonna have 12.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Lots of space.
Okay, good evening. I'd like to thank you for joining us this evening for the 2019 Garden City Commission Forum hosted by the Garden City Area Chamber of Commerce and the Chamber of Government Affairs Committee. Tonight, we welcome the following candidates who are seeking election to the City Commission: Dr. Lindsey Burns, Roy Cessna, Lisette Cruz, Shannon Dick, Manny Ortiz, and Deborah Euler. Candidates, thank you for joining us this evening. We appreciate that. The process
Glad to be
for-
here.
Good. The process for tonight's forum will begin with each candidate providing a 2-minute opening statement, followed by the question and answer session, and will conclude with a 2-minute closing statement. The order of candidate introductions was drawn at random, and that order will be reversed for the closing statements. Each candidate will be allowed 2 minutes to respond to each question. The order of candidate responses will rotate for each new question. This is a closed question forum. No rebuttal questions or answers will be permitted. And without further delay, let's begin tonight's program. For the 2-minute opening statement, we'll start with Roy Cessna.
How did I know that was going to happen? Are you ready?
Ready?
I'm giving that long pause to, no. I'm Roy Cessna. I'm a public information coordinator for Garden City Public Schools. I'm married and I have 2 sons that are currently attending Garden City Public Schools. I'm an active member of the community. I'm really work to give back to the community. I currently serve as the chair for the Crystal Apple Committee, which we're in the middle of right now. I'm also the chair of the Garden City High School Hall of Fame Committee. I also am chair or coordinate the Garden City Public Schools Foundation. I am been a chamber ambassador for over 20 years in the community, and I'm also a very active member of Trinity Lutheran Church. I'm running to really give back to the community. I've been on the commission for 2 terms. This will be my 8th year on the commission. I am really running to kind of finish out what we've kind of started on the commission was the sales tax initiative, which is the expansion of the things at the zoo, also the additional fire station that's be opening in 2024, also the expansion of Jenny Barker Road, as well as, I'm missing something, I can't remember. Jenny Barker Road, zoo, fire station, the gun range.
Yeah.
So those are the things that I'm looking at, as well as continuing economic development in our community, as well as retaining jobs in our community. Thank you.
Next, Shannon Dick.
All right, so when you're ready. Go. Right. I'm Shannon Dick. I'm a strategic analyst for Finney County Economic Development. I'm currently a city commissioner. What I want to say is we're doing a good job in Garden City. The reason I'm here is because I want to keep us doing the things we're doing. Like Roy was saying, we want to keep on the path that we started. And the things is that I believe in you. I believe in Garden City, and I believe Garden City is headed in the right direction. I believe in maintenance, careful planning, responsible spending, partnerships, and working hard. I believe that anyone who wants to work hard and make our community a better place deserves to live and work and have that opportunity in Garden City. I believe in our farmers, our teachers, our medical professionals, our industries, our business, and our people. We are an amazing community. I have a master's degree from K-State, so I believe in data-driven decisions. I believe looking at the data is important. I have a wonderful family. I grew up in Garden City. I have 3 wonderful girls, a wonderful wife. I'm actually raising my girls in the house that my grandma had, that my mom grew up in. For my platforms, I have a couple of local things: encourage and foster economic growth through the means and tools that we have been used to previously build our city, keeping the mill levy as reasonable as possible, embrace what makes our community great, which is our people. Our diversity does not need to be overcome. Our diversity is what gives our community our strength and vibrancy. I want to make it easy to do business in Garden City, and I want to stand by our complete educational system from pre-K to USD 457 to the community college to the options that we have to get our 4-year masters and degrees here in the Garden City. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Now Manny Ortiz.
Hi, Manny Ortiz. I was born here in Garden City. I grew up just between the co-op and the zoo, so I had lots of fun as a kid growing up here in Garden City. Just kind of seeing and watching Garden City grow in the direction it has it's really near and dear to my heart. And that's something that I think just understanding the culture and the relationships between people and businesses and companies. Like Shannon said, there are a lot of professionals here in Garden City that are recognized. I do think that there is a gap between those professions and the community. And I'm one to kind of maybe hopefully bridge that gap. I'd like to just take everything I can and introduce that to the community as far as just relationships, knowledge. We do have a great school system here. Everybody is teachable, even leaders. As we sit up here, we're all gathering information as we go. So I have a family of 6, or a family of 4. I got 4 kids, 2 boys, 2 girls. They're all in the school system. And as I graduated from the community college, and it was great when I was going there, I played football, grew up in Deerfield actually, so moving to Garden City was something that I was trying to get out of, when I went to K-State, but I found myself back here. We have lots of family, lots of friends here, lots of people that I know that I didn't realize I knew and that are rooting for me up here, but I just hope that I can, bring that enthusiasm, bring that professionalism to the community so that we can just grow and continue to grow and continue on the pace that we are. So, thank you.
Thank you, Manny. Lisette Cruz.
Well, I was born in Chicago. At age 5, my father saw opportunity in a safe environment to raise his family in Garden City. I attended USD 457, and thanks to our community college, I was able to graduate as a licensed practical nurse in 2010. 2013, I became a registered nurse, and I recently obtained my bachelor's through a Christian college, Tabor College in Hillsboro, Kansas. My past experience consists of long-term care, acute care being in your hospital setting. Saving lives in the ER is my passion. That's what I do. As a single parent for over 10 years to a son that's almost 17, and being an agency contracted nurse, I am blessed that I will be able to adjust my schedule if elected city commissioner to represent my community that has seen me grow. Throughout my nursing career, I've cared for and advocated for people of all aspects of life, various socioeconomic status, different ethnicities, from the unborn to the dying. If elected as your city commissioner, I would be an advocate for small business, economic development and well-being, job creation, and enhancement of quality of life for the residents of Garden City. A vote for me is a vote for revitalization, a creation of enthusiastic environment where people want to invest, grow a family, and enjoy life in Garden City. My name is Lisette Cruz, and I'm running for city commissioner.
Thank you, Lisette. Deborah Euler.
Well, good evening. First off, I'd like to thank the Chamber for holding this forum. And I'm Deb Euler, and I also want to be one of your city commissioners. If elected, I will proudly serve Garden City and the needs of its citizens. I will listen to opinions, and I will take those views into consideration so that I can make good, informed decisions. I moved to Garden City 20 years ago, and there were two things that cinched the deal for me to move here, and that was Main Street and the zoo. Seeing the vibrant downtown with people walking on the sidewalks, retail stores that were open, and busy restaurants excited me. Through the years, I've watched our community grow its retail, lodging, manufacturing, and agricultural sectors. What keeps me in this community is how we embrace and celebrate our diversity, our excellent parks and recreation, our green spaces, zoos, support of the arts, and our festivals that are unique to Garden City. Family is very important to me, and my husband Rex and I have a blended family with 8 children, and our youngest will graduate from high school next year. Being able to raise my family in a community that is safe, affordable, educationally sound, those are all things that are valuable to me. And I want Garden City to be a place where my kids want to come back and raise their families. I'm not afraid of working hard or making tough decisions. Over the years, I've served my church, my children's schools. The boards I sit on have taught me about governance, city budgets, incentives for new and existing businesses, and a lot more. I'm a proud graduate of Leadership Garden City, a past chamber ambassador. I've attended many city commission meetings, and last year I took part in the city's CIP process. I believe in giving back, and I'm excited to serve you.
Thank you, Deb. Now, Dr. Lindsay Burns.
Last but not least, right?
Right.
I'm humbled sitting up here. I think all of these candidates are excellent, and I will try not to plagiarize things that you've said before, but I think it's all very valid, and I appreciate all of you being here. And my name is Lindsay Burns. I grew up in Holcomb. I moved back here after I finished my medical residency to start a medical practice. I'm a board-certified pediatrician and internal medicine doctor. Life circumstances changed a little bit when I got divorced, and so I had to scramble and figure out a different job opportunity. So now I have a very odd commuter schedule where I work in Wichita, but I live here, and I am experiencing being a single mom and still wanting to very much be part of this community. And so I feel like I try and keep my feet wet and am so invested in this community. There was a big pull to come home, a big pull to come back to where my family is. And I think when I ran 2 years ago, I'm finishing my first term on the commission, that's what I said. I said, I want to be part of this. I want to be part of shaping this community for my children and making this a place that my boys will want to come home to. And I think that this, the commissions before and our commission has continued to fulfill the goals that we've set, and we're going down a very good path. And I am encouraged. I think being part of your civic government and part of your community is so important. And I love to look up here and see that all of these folks are saying the same thing. I just want to be here, and I just want to be helpful. So I again thank you for letting me be a part of this, and I'm excited to hear more tonight.
Thank you, candidates, for your opening statements. At this time, we will begin the question and answer portion of tonight's forum. As previously stated, each candidate will be allowed 2 minutes to respond to each question. We did draw names at random, and we'll begin with Lisette Cruz. With that, question number 1. You all may have answered this in part to begin with, but you can certainly expand on it because you have 2 minutes to do it. Why do you want to be a Garden City commissioner, And why should voters elect you?
Well, I'm 33 years old. I was about 20 years old when I bought my house. If I was 20 years old now with the same wage before, it'd be very difficult. Our community is growing, but as commissioner, I want to push forward to help retain and attract new young professionals and people that, for example, if they're older, retired, we also want to keep them here. I want to grow our economy without putting more burden on working families. I was buying a sandwich before I even knew that I was going to run for city commissioner, before that even crossed my mind. But I was talking to a gentleman, he was in his 30s, and he said to me, you know, I go work out of town, and I come back and I work another 6 hours. People are doing that, and we cannot drain more people like that. They're working 12, 14, 16 hours. And if we continue, we must continue to have fiscal responsibilities because there's so many hours they can work. Taking those hours away is taking hours away from people raising their children. So that's one of the reasons why I do want to run, and I hope I am elected because I do want to bring those younger professionals in. I want to grow Garden City. As a nurse, I want more specialties here. I don't know if anybody has been transported out. It's very expensive to be flown out. If we grow Garden City, we're able to retain and have more specialties here as in physicians, so that way people don't go out. So that's part of the healthcare part that I will try to bring in.
Thank you. Manny?
Same question?
Yes.
Okay, well, I work for the architect's office here in Garden City, so I've been in construction and design for probably the past, it's scary to say, but like 27, 28 years. So I think I can help Lizette with some of that issues with, you know, Garden City. It is so expensive here to live. It's so expensive here to you know, grow a family here. It is tough, but there are some options out there, I believe, that we can probably seek and look into for some subsidies or some developments that could be built, that could bring, you know, lower price of living, that can offset some of that cost. I think that's an area where, you know, I can bring some knowledge into the city, and which they're doing a good job already. But I think there's, you know, a small focus on some of the just the rural development in Garden City. So bringing the cost down on the cost of living is probably helps a lot. Also bringing up minimum wage would probably help a lot too. That's comes more from the state. And I feel strongly about the census. That too also helps bring in money to the city. So educating people on voting and getting registered really helps the community in funding. So I think just looking at some of those options I can help with, and all of us can probably help. I know there's others out there that could help with that too, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Shannon?
All right. Well, my story starts with Garden City Journal. And if you're not familiar with that, that's a Facebook page that I started back when I came to the town. Part of the reason that I got involved with that is because I was looking at news that other communities were looking and producing about us, KSN, those out of area places, and they were reporting murders, all the bad things, none of the good things. So I looked on a forum about the city, and one of the moms said, my son just got a contract, or a contract, whatever it is, to play a scholarship, to play at the community college for baseball. Should he take it? Somebody else said, I was there 25 years ago. There's nothing to do there. It's trash. Look at the news now. There's nothing going on. So what I did with Garden City Journal is I started to post one good thing a day about Garden City. And once I started to pay attention, I noticed that I needed to post 3 things, then 6 things, and then it got out of hand. I was doing 12 things a day, so we had to dial it back. But in that process, I started to get really involved with the community. And one of the things I started to do was read the city commission packets, started to go to all the commission meetings that I could, either in person or online. I started to go to things like the goal setting. And so when I was going to the goal setting retreat, I noticed I was the only person out of the whole crowd that wasn't a city employee. And this was just this last time. So when it came time for Melvin Dell to step down, and look and say, who's going to fill this role? I was the only person that was actually taking the steps to do it. So the reason I became commissioner and I'm in this position now is because I was already doing all the work to keep up with that. And I feel that I could continue on with the mission, like Roy is saying, with where we started and where we need to go. And where that we need to go is to continue to grow Garden City. You look across the state, there's only a few places that are growing like we're growing, and it's here, and then it's out in eastern Kansas. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Roy?
Again, we've done great things in our community, and we need to continue to grow and expand. We need to continue to retain our current jobs, but we also need to recruit more jobs and industry to our community like we've done in the past, but we need to continue to do that and Garden City, really make Garden City the regional hub of western Kansas. We're doing that right now, but we need to continue that trek to make that happen in our community. And that's really what I've been focused on for the last number of years, and that's where we continue to need to go in our community. Garden City is a great place to live, work, and raise a family. We have a lot of great assets here. It's a quality of life thing. You know, when we're recruiting, like Lisette said, you know, it's a recruitment thing to get people to come to our community. And it's a quality of life issue where you bring a lot of these things to our community to bring that quality of life to our community that brings professional people to our community. It's us, you know, we're always trying to look at ways to get people, professionals, to come to our community, and it's those quality of life things that actually attract people and retain them here in Garden City. So continuing to actually grow our community will help us in the long run to be that regional area and that regional hub for western Kansas. A lot of things too, and as we grow our community with new businesses, that'll help in the sales tax. Over the last number of years, the sales tax has increased, and we've had these initiatives that we've put in place using the sales tax. But having that sales tax and growing those businesses in our community will stabilize the mill levy and will actually help to reduce the mill levy in our community. So that's what I'm looking at going and where we need to keep going in Garden City. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. Lindsay?
Yeah, I think it's been very illuminating to me, my time on this commission, about what competing values come to bear when we are talking about growth, especially. My lens of looking at a lot of the issues that come before us come as a working professional, a single mother, someone who's struggling with childcare, someone who is trying to look at things from an equitable perspective and also trying to understand the plight of folks across the community. And I think that the issues about a minimum wage and a good living wage are something we really need to lead on. And I think when we talk about affordable housing, it's not just RHIDs, it's really how do we really get at the logistics of how we provide good housing, because without good schools, good housing, good health care, you don't recruit anybody to come to the community. I mean, those are the bedrock things. Well, how do we build the infrastructure, and then at what cost is that? And what values inform that? Does that mean just giving tax incentives for huge companies to come in, or is that also somehow balancing reinvestment in the businesses that are here? I think that it's both. And I think that's what we've seen. And what Roy's talking about is quite accurate. And I think what came as a revelation to me, and something that I've struggled with at times, is we really need to balance how we apportion the funding of our government functions from this community. And is it just mill levy, based on property taxes? How much of it should be apportioned to sales tax? And then how do we kind of make that even across different types of business owners, different members of the community? But as far as things like paid family leave, minimum wage, yes, some of those are dictated through the state. Governor Collier actually introduced for state workers last session paid family leave. Those are things that we can model as a business organization, as the city of Garden City. And I think we should do that.
Thank you, Lindsay. Deb?
Well, the reason I'm running, it kind of comes down to giving back to the community. Garden City has been my home for 20 years, and I have received a lot from that. When I look at the education that my children have received, or I look at the fact that I've been able to be employed here for 20 years in various nonprofits, this is a wonderful opportunity for me to do something for somebody else. And that really is what it boils down to for me. I do come with a unique set of skills because I have been in the nonprofit sector for over 30 years. And that unique experience allows me the opportunity to work with populations that aren't otherwise represented in government or in schools or in just general conversation. A lot of times they're the forgotten. When I worked in public radio, for me the biggest thing was trying to remain unbiased, but also finding out all of the pieces to the story and making sure that we could tell those stories from those who couldn't tell their own story. My background is actually in special education and elementary education, and so I have a lifelong love of advocating for people who can't otherwise advocate for themselves. I also have been able to serve on quite a few different boards, and that has brought with me the experience of learning about city government, making sure that we follow a budget, making sure that just because somebody wants to buy something, well, we need to look to see if it's in the budget. And it doesn't mean you raise income or raise taxes to get to that. It means that you have to work within what you've got. And so having that experience combined with my nonprofit experience, I think gives me a unique perspective. And those are the reasons why I'm running.
Thank you, Deb. Question number 2, Manny, we'll start with you. What do you feel are the best ways to involve residents in the commission's decision-making processes?
Okay. Well, I think like Shannon said earlier, it's just, we got to get people involved. We got to put out as much information as we can and coming to these meetings, coming to the cities, the CIPs, one that I've been through for the past 2 years. That's great information. I've also heard of some others out there that deal with teachers and schools and committees and like that you can get involved with. So I don't know if there's a real good sense of, or a real good place you can go and find that information. I haven't done a lot of digging because I know where they're at. I deal with the city almost daily, so I'm just a block down the street, so I come to the meetings when I can. So, but I think the best way to get out there to the community is to just advise them on where you can go and how you can gather this information. Knowledge is key. Knowledge is something that I deal with kids every day. I'm very involved with our church, First United Methodist Church. I co-help with the youth group there. I've gone through Kansas Leadership, gone through a lot of other committees and organizations where all that information is great access to knowledge. Teachers, they're out there and they want us to get involved. They want to teach even outside of the classroom. So professionals, go have a cup of coffee with them. I think there's lots of ways that we can engage the community. It's just we need to be that person to go out and offer it. So,
Thank you, man. Shannon.
All right. Okay, so there's first a couple ways that it's already instituted that citizens can get involved with the city government. One is the CIP process where we talk about capital improvement projects. That's open. That's a series of a series of nights where you can go and learn about what's coming up over the next 5 or 6 or 10 years and how much does that cost, and you learn about all those projects. So that's a really good thing. One that we have to push, Citizens Academy. That's an amazing project where people can go and learn about all the different departments about the city. We need to do that. The police also have a similar program where they can learn about that. And then other organizations like Leadership Garden City, volunteering as a chamber ambassador, stuff like that. We also need to continue our push for social media, getting these things out like we're doing here, like the city does, where you can have the commission meetings on Facebook and you can watch them at night when you're going to bed to go to sleep, because that's about how interesting they usually are. That's a great way to do it. We need to make sure people continue to know what commission meetings are, and the goal-setting retreats and the town halls. Town halls are when people can come in and talk to anything that they want to talk about, and we just sit here and discuss those things. So that's another good way to do it. The thing that I want to talk about now that I have, I'm sure, like 30 seconds though, is we need to do a better job of youth outreach. I was talking to some of the nurses who are actually getting dual credit from high school and the community college at Ranch House. And I was just talking with them about some of the things. I was actually there to talk about to the residents, but all the students were coming and talking, and they were asking questions about the STAR bond. They were asking questions about all of the things that are going on, which means that they want this information, but we aren't getting the information. So we need to think about how we can get out and get some of this stuff to the youth. If it's a youth CIP process, if it's a youth citizens academy where it's focused on that, we can do it through that way. We do a good job. We can do better.
Thank you, Shannon. Roy?
Yeah, here's a push for all the advisory boards that you can get on with the city. Anything from A to Z. We have an advisory board for it. As mentioned, the CIP process, that's where you get citizen input of the future growth of what our community could possibly look like, and you can vote on that. Again, social media, it's been a drive for, I know, previous commissions, but our current commission to expand communication with our citizens. We do surveys. Tomorrow, the mayor will be doing the State of the City during the chamber breakfast, and that always provides a lot of good information. So come on out for that. That starts at 7:10 tomorrow. Just a little plug there for the mayor. So, but really, those are the things that how we can get not only citizen input. We send out surveys in the electric utility bills on what you would like to see in the community through the CIP process, and that actually starts the CIP, Capital Improvement Programming process, and then that goes to the committee. The committee then votes on that. We get the huge packet to help us in driving our decision-making process for the budget and what our goals will look like as we grow the community and as we push the community forward in a positive direction. So we do get a lot of input. You know, I get it drives my wife crazy, but, sitting at restaurants, people walk by and start talking to me about city business, and that's input. So it's just being open and listening to the community. Again, town hall meetings, we have those every fifth Tuesday, when there's a fifth Tuesday in the month, but that's how we get input, and then we use that input to drive our community forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. Lindsay?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that the advisory boards are an excellent place to start and really make a big impact. I always read the minutes. They're always included in our packets of all the advisory boards, whether it be community health, traffic advisory board, planning commission. I mean, it has been so illuminating for me, things that I didn't understand, or perspectives that I might have taken for granted or not really put enough weight to, really comes through in those meetings. And I think that it's we have an incredible network of advisory boards. And at least for me as a commissioner now, I read the recommendations of those advisory boards, and I'll take them. I mean, I have a hard time disagreeing with those a lot of times because I find that it's so well done. And I think that it really comes from someone who has a passion about an issue or some particular interest and says, that's what I want to work on. That's where I want to start. And it just grows from there. And I think so many people have started their careers on advisory boards or really community boards. I mean, certainly all of us. And that's how I started too. I started with the Russell Child Development Board, and it was something that meant a lot to me in my professional life and then my children, and something that just kind of grew. And I think that's how we engage our communities. I agree. We need to do much better jobs as communicators, and it's always interesting to me where people get their news or where they hear about things and how much. But if you start building coalitions of community around a particular issue, all of a sudden people are excited and they mobilize around that. And, you saw that this morning with our group from the high school collaborating with the Community Health Advisory Board, talking about tobacco ordinances. So I think that there's a lot to be said for how things are done now. Yes, we could communicate a little bit more, involve more people, but there's a good framework there.
Thank you, Lindsay. Deb?
Well, I'm a big proponent of meeting people where they are. I think that a lot of times people just don't know how to get involved, and so you have to help encourage them. I had a booth at Fall Fest this year, and it was interesting because I didn't think anybody would come, and Shannon was there and Beth was there, and I was impressed by how many people actually came to our booth knowing we were candidates and wanted to talk with us and just visit with us. And it was just a simple education. It was, talking to them about things that mattered to them. I mean, they were concerned about the pool and where that was going to go, or they were concerned about their property taxes, or concerned about the pothole in the middle of the street in front of their house. I mean, those are some of the ways to engage, is just to figure out how to be a little bit creative in reaching and visiting with constituents. I love the idea of getting involved with nonprofit boards. I didn't know as much about Garden City. Well, I guess I realized that there was more to learn about Garden City once I started getting involved with the United Way Board, and I was a community volunteer. And I was surprised at just the number of services that are offered, and that's a great way to get started. When I was a chamber ambassador, again, another great way to visit with the business community, find out what was important to them, and engage them as well. And I think as people have found out that I'm a candidate, as I'm putting yard signs in, that's really when you find out where people are thinking and giving their opinions. And so I think we can be creative in thinking about ways, but I love all of the things that you guys suggested too.
Thank you, Deb. Lisette?
How to improve community involvement in decision-making. I actually served on the Health Advisory Board, where you had Living Well, you had a realtor, and you had physical therapy. Like a lot of have covered. You have to find what motivates people. Just because I'm in healthcare doesn't mean it's going to motivate you. You might be interested in the zoo, and that's where you have your advisory boards. I think as medium age, I believe is 29, 30. And me being 33, I think we should drive into technology. Having these advisory board meetings, so that way people can learn and see what a meeting is, how does it take place, so that way they learn. Again, it's motivating people, what interests you. I would really push forward to technology and getting these meetings broadcast where people can learn, see the issues that are being discussed, how decision takes place. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisette. Okay, question number 3. Shannon, we'll start with you. As a commissioner, how would you evaluate which projects are worth pursuing and/or implementing?
Well, that plays right into my hand of being a statistician. I do feel like there are some projects that you can evaluate on a numbers basis, and there's some that you can't evaluate. For the ones that can, if we're talking about our electric system and how we go about addressing that with connecting to the Southwest Power Pool and all that stuff, this really is a complete economics numbers kind of thing. So in those cases where we are dealing with numbers, it's a matter of planning and going forth and trusting the staff to be able to do that. I am very big a proponent of talking about sacrificing a little bit short term for a gain long term. So I like investing. I like doing that sort of thing. That's one of the things that drives me. But the other thing is when we're talking about things that involve emotions, you can't tie numbers to those. And a good example of that is, and everybody's going to hate me for bringing this up, but it's the big pool. Economically, it doesn't make any sense to keep that running for another season. We lose money, we lose water, but part of that decision is paying homage to a 100-year-old pool that has been part of everybody who's grown up in this community, paying homage to that and giving everybody one more chance to have a good time at that pool before we do a renovation of that. And so you can't take that and put some numbers to that. Sometimes you say, you know what's important is people's feelings. And we do have to take that into account sometimes. So I try to balance those in those cases. A good way to assess that is talk to the community. How do they feel about these things that aren't just numbers? And make sure that we're taking their opinions in when we do those sorts of decisions. So as much as I love to say, let's just look at data, sometimes we have to look at our feelings too.
Thank you, Shannon. Roy?
Yeah, it goes back to the advisory boards, getting input from the advisory boards and getting that expertise of them actually digging into the areas of of those departments and then giving us that information that helps us drive our decisions. Also through the, like I said, the CIP process, that gives us a lot of good information from the community on evaluating that input from the community. We get, the people vote on that, they rank that, they helps us actually determine on the direction we need to go in our community. A lot of it really is economic development. How do we drive and make our community grow? And that's what I look at on how do we create our community as a regional community in western Kansas. And that includes transportation, that includes retail development, that includes industrial development, that includes downtown development, that includes really a quality of life issue for us. Again, kind of Shannon brought it up, the big pool, but how does that fit into retaining people here in our community and actually bringing people to our community to live, work, and raise a family? And that's what we really need to look at on how do we drive those decisions to keep and sustain our community and continue the growth that we've seen in the last number of years. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. Lindsay?
Yeah, I think that in all of this, and I think one of the challenges of being a commissioner, and it's very much put together well by staff. I can't say enough how well city staff frames these pictures for us and then brings us the policy question. But I'd say you really have to have a strategic plan and a long-term plan in place and be able to see all the pieces, just as you mentioned, Roy, just how is this affecting this, and how do I balance all of that to make the end product the best, and also be able to anticipate what we want that end product to look at like in 30 years. And I think when we're starting to talk about housing, and we're starting to talk about green space, and we're starting to talk about even ordinances that are going to determine how the city grows, where the city grows, whether that's physically, economically, whatnot, it is important to have a 30, 40-year plan in place. And I think we do that. I mean, that's why we go and revisit our goals, and we set terms on all of those goals and progress markers. And I think that sometimes that gets undervalued because we don't discuss it constantly, but I think that's also a guiding principle that's always in the back of our minds, because that's what's guiding our decisions as we go forward and we look at whatever business is before us. At least, I mean, I think that's my impression. That's been my impression working with this commission for the past 2 years.
Thank you, Lindsay. Deb?
Well, I think, whenever you're evaluating a project, there are so many different perspectives and ways that you can look at it. But as city commissioners, you have to think about it from that 30,000-foot level. And, how is it going to, as Shannon said, impact short-term, but then what are the long-term impacts of that as well? But then thinking about it also from the heart perspective, because of course you've got sentimentality in that, and you have to weigh that versus what your head is telling you or what the numbers are telling you. And so it's kind of like putting a puzzle together and looking at all of the pieces. And as you start putting those pieces together, you look at the City of Garden City's strategic objectives, you look at where we've been in the past, and then you look at where we could possibly go, and move this city forward. And all of those pieces together kind of help in guiding you with those decisions. And I think getting input from other city commissioners, getting input from the city staff, because I agree. I think the city staff does a wonderful job with putting together suggestions. That's always something I enjoy when I'm reading the packets, is what did they recommend? Because I think, they're the ones in the trenches. They're the ones that are working day in, day out, trying to bring these projects to fruition and trying to weigh all of that together. So it's a different, process to try to evaluate that, but I always look at the end of the day, how is this going to benefit short-term and how's it going to benefit long-term?
Thank you, Deb. Lisette?
Prioritizing projects implemented, well, we have to look at different things. For example, the current need, short-term, long-term goals. Again, I go back to attracting and retaining professionals. We don't want people leaving. We want to make it affordable. What I do, my background, I prioritize quite a bit every time I work. So it's those projects that, yes, it may take time to accomplish, but to have the overall growth for our economy, and have a safe environment for our community. Again, with the thought of being a single parent, always having that back thought on single parents, our community members, so that way they don't suffer that burden. So overall, economic development without a financial burden for our community.
Thank you, Lisette. Manny?
Yeah, I think CIP is a good place to start. That's, they kind of prioritize, and that's a good show that Shannon puts on as well with the statistics and all that. So, but that does I think that does drive what the city looks at to work on first. Me personally, I like all of the planning and development and the growth of Garden City. I mean, that's right up my alley with architecture. If I had a redo, I'd go into urban planning, but here we are. So I think just focusing on the safety, I think for me is just more of safety with traffic and stuff around Garden City. There's lots of areas where we do have traffic accidents and things like that. So I know the cost of traffic lights are expensive, so that's a cost that we need to look at as far as a city on whether to put in place where they're needed or just do roundabouts. I know that's kind of a bad word, talking about roundabouts, but I have no problems going around those. But I think just some things like that go along with the planning and development and the growth of Garden City, and just keeping those emergency pathways open and clear for emergency vehicles, traffic. That's just something that we have to look at and plan for 40 years, 50 years down the road as well. And I know we're doing a great job, and we've got great people on that now, but I just think we can, it's just something that if you're excited about something, or if you have something that you want to bring up to the city, the CIP is one that you could actually bring those issues up, and we can talk about it and rate those issues. And if something up here, if we're not talking about the topic that question was brought about, go to those CIP meetings, tell them your issue, put in your input, and then that may fall into place as quick as possible. So,
Thank you, Manny. Question number 4. Roy, we're going to start with you. What are your views about the city's current debt load?
The current debt load? Yes, we do have debt, but it's because we are an expanding community. We're also really putting a lot back into our infrastructure. A lot of it's old infrastructure, like our water main, or water lines that we're retrofitting in the older part of town. So we do have to take on debt to fix those areas. You have to take on some debt to move your community forward. Can we do a better job? Yes. Can we have less debt? Yes. But as a growing community, you need to take on debt to help expand and grow the community. When people come to your commission meeting with brown water and show them your white sheets and they're brown, we do have an issue, and that needs to get addressed, and that we have to take care of that. And the way to take care of that is to take out bonds to help meet those needs and help fix those issues that come up like that. Also, as our community continues to grow, we need to take on debt to help expand our community through infrastructure and through expanded services as our community continues to grow. We always keep an eye on that. We have an outstanding financial officer, and our staff does an awesome job at looking at keeping us in line. But again, as the community continues to grow, we have to take on debt, but we pay it down as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. Lindsay?
Oh, Roy asked me why I brought this. I might have been reading the chamber website. Just like to be prepared. So I thought that was an interesting question. Well, what is our debt load? And how do we really analyze it? And how do we look at it? And how do we explain that we are issuing $17 million worth of general obligation bonds in a responsible way? Because we do it in a responsible way. We, as a city, we have a very good rating from Moody's. We always get good interest rates, and that's important. And that helps us decide how much are we really going to take on. How can we do this responsibly? It's the same kind of thing when you go and try and get a loan for a car or anything else, and you look at that, or a house and look at that interest rate. So anyway, I revisited the audit report from 2018, and I thought maybe a useful number to look at as we talk about financial health. And we budget every year what our debt obligation pay down is. I mean, that's part of our line item is this is what our debt service is. And so we are paying attention to that all the time. But I think a useful marker, and this is what our accountant recommends too, is our net position. And net position over time, I'm quoting now from the report, may serve as a useful indicator of the government's financial position. In the case of Garden City, assets and deferred outflows of resources exceeded liabilities and deferred inflows by $125 million. That's a lot. That's a lot. But at the close of the most recent fiscal year. And as that increases, as our net position increases over time, that's how you kind of look at the financial health. And the good news is ours has. And it went up by 10 million last year. So, I mean, I think that when we talk about debt load, when we talk about $125 million, that's a big number. But when we really look at it in the context of how we've been taking on that debt, how we've been responsible in paying back that debt, what that debt is for, and in the context of a community that we're trying to support of this size, that is one of the only growing communities in Southwest Kansas, I think all of those factors have to be analyzed. And we try and be very responsible. I see the red card. I'm sorry, Mike, I get excited.
Thank you, Lindsay. Deb?
Well, we're constantly competing against and with other communities. And so I think if we want to continue growing the way we're growing, obviously taking on debt the responsible way is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it's kind of like when you think about whether or not you're going to, buy a different home or how you take on debt for your own personal use is kind of when you think about the city growing, because it's all relative, right? Your debt to income ratio. And I am always amazed whenever Melinda talks about the budget and talks about our great rating and the fact that Garden City is responsible in paying back that debt. I think that says a lot about the community. And if we want to continue growing, and if we compare ourselves to, as Shannon has pointed out, that Garden City is growing in Southwest Kansas and a lot of other communities aren't growing out here, I think that says a lot about that we're moving in the right direction. And so when I think about our debt load, I believe in transparency, and I believe that as long as we're able to communicate with constituents as to why we're taking on that debt load and what our reasons for in doing that, then at the end of the day, I think we can feel pretty good about knowing that we're also growing Garden City, but at the same time, we're being responsible.
Thank you, Deb. Lisette?
Debt load. I believe it's a necessary evil. As we grow, we need to take on debt. And a few commissioner meetings back recently, there was bond refinancing. So there's people out there working to refinance our bonds so that way we save money. So that's very important. And as we continue to grow, we will continue to have more debt. I think local government, the city has done a great job and, and being transparent about those numbers. And I, being young, not bringing out age, but that's a big number, And so, but it takes a lot of money to build infrastructure, those electricity poles, things like that takes money, and we need to continue. It's an investment. That's what I consider debt load. It's an investment for our community, for the overall safety and the well-being of our community.
Thank you, Lisette. Manny?
Yeah, nobody likes debt, I guess, but I mean, the amount of debt that the city's in, you got to look at everything as far as what we've all been talking about, as far, gathering the information on what is actually being spent on. And like Lizette said, that there were some rates out there that we were able to get, and we were able to lock in at a cheaper rate, so it did save the city money. I think it's good that we do have multiple eyes on our debt as far as Garden City's debt, we've got a good grasp on where we're at and where we need to be. So for me, I don't worry about it. We all should, but we do have professionals that are looking at that and that are on top of things, so.
Thank you, Manny.
Thanks.
Shannon?
Can I have a 15-minute extension on my answer?
You can take my minute and a half.
Okay, this is a very complicated topic, but done right, with the appropriate debt, a debt that we take on is an investment in our future. A good example is, like we were talking about the electric system that we just did. We were able to show that if we take on that debt, we will be able to, in the end, save our customers, our citizens, money by connection fees, by the rates that we're going to choose. So it is a debt that gets recorded against the total Garden City debt. But in the end, it's actually better for us to have that debt. So no, I don't agree with all debt is bad debt or debt should be avoided. There are things where that takes us, that is what actually allows us to grow and allows us to have better opportunities for our citizens. So debt by itself is a bad measurement. One of the ways we can measure it against others is just looking at the GO debt, the general obligation debt. And this is, again, from the Lewis Hooper and Dick audit report like Lindsay was going at. And if we look at the 2017, that's what we reported it at. Garden City is 4th out of 15th in GO bond debt. So we do take out debt, but we take it out for specific reasons that are good. Our GO bond debt at that time, and again, it has changed because of some recent things, was about 20 million. For example, about halfway through the pack is Dodge City at 40 million GO debt. Lenexa, more than $120 million in GO debt. So we do have some debt, but I feel we are doing a very good job of strategically planning that debt to actually make it better for our citizens and take advantage of the opportunities that we see as these come along. And the best way to illustrate this is if you look at our Moody's rating that we just got. Our debt that we're issuing is considered investment grade. Then they are recommending our debt as an investment. I mean, it's a bond still, so it's not going to be that good of an investment, but we are at investment rate. So when we're talking about our debt, we are doing a good job. I hope you didn't say stop yet.
Thank you, Shannon. Question number 5, Lindsay, we're going to start with you.
All right.
What do you see as the most pressing needs for infrastructure or capital projects in Garden City?
Oh, capital projects. I mean, I think I really agree with what Manny said about safe intersections, and we've talked about that on the CIP project, talking about road improvements, talking about roundabouts, talking about signaled intersections and those kind of things, and we've got a plan for that. More generally, I mean, I think the topic over the last 25 years is housing and affordable housing, and we have a pretty big wage gap, like an affordability gap is what I think we should say about the housing stock that we have available. And so I think we need to continue to talk about ways that we can actually make the cost of living more affordable here in Garden City. And maybe that means augmenting transportation a little bit more, and maybe that means, you know, changing the way we look at housing a little bit more and those kind of things. And I think some of that means a capital investment by the city, honestly. How much that is and what that looks like is up for debate, but I think that we need to start to understand that there's a role for government. Well, I don't say start to understand. I think we have been participating in that. I think that, you know, but there is a role for local government to play in trying to even that affordability out a little bit across our community. And I think as we start to talk about strategic investing in those kind of projects, some of that will come out a little bit more.
Thank you, Lindsay. Deb.
Well, I think, my opinion, is that I think one of the biggest capital needs, as Lindsay said, is thinking about cost of living, but also with affordable housing. When a lot of times when I've talked with people who are moving to Garden City, they look at the cost of housing and they say, wow, it's expensive to buy a home here or to rent here, or there aren't places for me to rent, or there's not enough places for me to buy. And so I think if we want to keep and attract a great workforce, we need to make sure that we have affordable places for our citizens to live, and so that we can continue to attract those quality workers. Now, I know that new construction is costly, and I think that the city needs to figure out a way, or we need to work with public and private partners to try to figure out incentives or figure out a way to bring those costs down so that more construction can happen and that more developers feel as though if they were to invest in building in Garden City, that they would get, see the benefit out of that and see some profit margin out of it as well. And so there's kind of that balance between weighing new with old construction or retrofitting. And so I think making sure that housing is taken care of.
Thank you, Deb. Lisette?
Pressing need for capital projects. Again, affordable housing. I would like for people to become homeowners, to have more homeowners here, to set roots here. And we have to look at housing in different ways, whether it's decrease in sizes, rows, and mixed housing, to be affordable and attractive. And again, working with those contractors, and like Deb said, incentives for contractors, whether we need to start bringing people in. I think as the city grows, we need to continue to push that. And it's very important, because it would be very sad if people started to live because they can't afford to buy a decent house here. I mean, we have beautiful houses, but we want to retain those people here. Again, I would push for more on your engineering, the contractors, what different housing developments can we have here, rather just, again, the row, the mixing houses, whether, it's a building with 4 houses, what do you call that?
Was that a fourplex?
Yes, a fourplex,
Yeah.
sorry. Things like that, whether it's like a community center focused on those issues, we need to think outside the box and push forward. Again, we need to take, as commissioner, to get local government involved in, investing in Garden City.
Thank you, Lisette. Manny?
Urban planning, yeah, here we go again. So that's kind of, that's my thought and my feeling on it is kind of similar to what everybody's been saying. I know it's going to be a tough egg to crack, but certainly with the city's involvement, we could probably, it's possible. Garden City's great to get along with, and I think there's some things out there that we can put in place. And I'm not going to tell you all my secrets, or we're not going to stand up here and figure out what the city's, what we're going to do and what's going to happen tomorrow. But there's some great ideas out there that haven't been brought to the table, and with realtors, landowners, contractors, builders, architects, engineers. There's lots of ways to possibly go about and doing affordable living, affordable housing. Mixed-use developments, PUDs. There's lots of incentives out there too with TIFs that would help pay for infrastructure that the city offers. So, there's things out there. I think it is pressing. That's a pressing issue, and I think that's something that we probably have to have on our plate as the main course. So is it with childcare. So those are some big topics, and those are some things that we've got to figure out here in the near future. So.
Thank you, Manny.
Thanks.
Shannon?
Okay, I don't consider housing to be a child care, or to be a child care issue, to be a capital issue. So I won't talk about that. It is a great need. Don't get me wrong on that. But this is where we stand up and give an applause and a round of thanks to all of our city workers who's put the forethought and the work into having a great city that has no pressing capital issues. We're not Wichita, where their wastewater system could go at any time because they haven't been keeping up with that. We've been doing a really, really, really good job with keeping on top of the really pressing issues, and that is because of the work that the city has done. But saying that, the two things that are big capital projects that are coming up, and Lindsay's going to hate herself for one of these. The first is the airport. We do need to redo that terminal. It is old, it is outdated, and with the pressure that we have on pilots, there is going to be possibly in the near future where we will not be able to fly in the planes that we need to. We need to fly in bigger planes. They want to fly in bigger planes, but we don't have a terminal that can take bigger planes because they need the little arm thing, whatever that's called, the express arm thing. We can't do that. We need to do that.
The Skyway?
The Skyway?
Yes.
We need that.
Walkway to the plane.
Right? But I mean, so that's one big thing.
Skybridge.
That's a $25 million capital project that we need to figure out how to do sooner than later. The second one is the floodplain.
Oh,
That's when we. So
this is my
you-
nightmare. Stop it, Shannon.
So you might not know it, but the drainage ditch is considered a river. And that river is considered, depending on how FEMA wants to classify it, as making our whole center part of our city a floodplain. At some point soon, depending on what FEMA decides how we're gonna classify a drainage ditch, we might have to reroute that whole drainage ditch or rebuild that whole thing. That is not a small project. That is a big project that we need to be ready to take on as a capital project. Again, we're doing a good job. There's nothing pressing that we really have to do, but looking forward, we do have the ability to take on a couple. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Roy?
Thank you, Shannon.
Yes, thank you, Shannon. He took my, I was going to talk about the airport and we're really pushing to get a regional, a terminal to make us truly a regional hub in western Kansas for flights. If you notice the enplanements, we had over 26,000. That's more than all 3 other cities in our region combined. Yes, it would be great to expand our flight service out of our community, and we've talked and looked at other airlines and our current airline, and they want to bring in bigger airplanes. The only problem with that is our terminal doesn't support that. And so I'm pushing, and I know the other commissioners are pushing for a terminal. Also, and we just passed it, and I think it was a great thing of the diversifying our energy portfolio and our power grid so we could connect directly to the main power grid, and that'll help save our electric customers a huge amount of money in the long run. When I got on the commission, we were looking at a number of rate increases, like 6% for 6 year, over 6% each year over a 6-year period. And we asked city staff to look into alternatives to that. And when we did switch to the Kansas Municipal Energy Association, that saved us over $4 million. And we continue to work on that to help our community members and our customers with those rates to keep them at a steady level. Also looking at regional water, and that's going to be an issue as we continue in the future. And one of the big capital projects that the commission's looking at is the big pool. Thank you, because she's about to stop sign up.
Thank you, Roy.
I was gonna drop the pool out there. I'll work it into my next answer.
There you go.
Okay, well, question number 6, we will start with you, Deb. What components of the city's budget do you believe should be increased? And what budget components do you believe should be decreased?
Well, that is a good question. Well, I think on the pieces that should be increased, I think that we need to figure out a way in order to work with somehow funding and working with childcare and making that a priority in this community to figure out if there's a private-public way that we can make that work. I think that the city does a really good job with plowing snow and with the street repairs and so I those are good budget items. As far as decreasing, gosh, that's also another good question. I guess what comes to my mind is when I think about if there's a snowstorm or a blizzard or something, we certainly don't want to decrease anything there. But I think if we can just, when looking at the budget, looking at some of that overhead costs and seeing if there's not a way that maybe within those line item budgets that there might not be some cuts that we could make there.
Thank you, Deb. Lisette.
Budget. Well, I was reviewing numbers 2 last night, and, the city does a great job by breaking that down on one of the worksheets. It's a stack about this big. From tree trimming to K-9 training, one of the things I would really want to push on is safety, and that goes along with our drug task, is either retraining. I'm not saying anything bad, but, making our cities safer in regards to drugs. And I mean drugs illegal, of course, legal too. The opioids and stuff like that. To me, it's a red flag when we've had 3 shootings within a 2 months span. Again, reality, things are gonna happen. Police officers are not gonna be there at the house before shooting, but having more, to me, safety and really drilling down on our illegal drugs. And that would be an increase. Decrease, I don't think I would decrease anything at this time, but I would really want to push forward and make our streets safer in regards to illegal drugs.
Thank you, Lisette. Manny?
There's a lot of things to review out there, so I think one of the main parts for mine would probably be for, like I've been mentioning with roads. We don't have a very good system in place from budget for updating roads. Of course, with the snowstorm a couple of years ago, we kind of found that out with all the potholes, but I think that's probably an area where we can up, the portion for that is to fix our roads and maybe make them into concrete at some point. I think Sam would probably appreciate that, but as far as decreasing, yeah, I don't know where we can decrease. I know there's probably some area out there, but I'm drawing a blank right now, so that's it.
Thank you, Manny. Shannon?
Well, this is where we get to congratulate our city staff again. They do a very, very good job of the money that we give them and we let them be stewards of. I don't feel like we should increase or decrease any, but especially at the level of commission. The department heads do a very good job of prioritizing. They listen to the CIP, they listen to their internal priorities. They set their budget. They know how much money they have to spend, and they stay within that budget. For an example of them doing a good job of self-policing on this, we were looking at a 4-point mill rate coming into this budget season, or when we were looking at this. And we didn't want to do that. So we went back to the police, or we went back and the department said, is there any places you can cut? And a couple of them that could cut did. The police did that, and we were down to be able to put it down to a 1 mill rate increase, 1 point something. So I don't think, there's nothing that I will say that needs to increase or decrease. That's for the department heads to decide. They know how to best run the city. And our job is to say, yeah, this looks good or this doesn't look good. There's no reason for me to say we need to specifically cut whatever, how much hairbrushes we buy for the K-9 unit or something like that. So, I mean, but this is because we have a very good city staff that does take a good, that does do a good job with the money that we do give them in to work with.
Thank you, Shannon. Roy?
Well, the city has increased the budget for the police department. They have been going through reconfiguration and adding some personnel. Safety and security of our community is a top priority for us. We just had an announcement that we will be getting DEA officers in our community, and that's where Chief Utes has done a great job working with the federal government and bringing the DEA back to our community. We actually had them in our community for a while until the federal government made some budget cuts, but he's worked with our federal representatives and has brought back 6 actually officers to our community, but will be working in the region on drug-related issues in this area. So, you say how to cut. Again, we go through the budget. The department heads go through the budget. I mean, we go through every line. It takes quite a few weeks to go through our budget, and we're very good stewards of the tax dollars that our community gives us. The department heads and the employees of our community work hard to use every dollar to its fullest benefit to serve the needs of our community. As our community grows, and it goes back to economic development, as we continue to grow and expand our industries in our community, that helps drive and bring in people into our community and add sales tax, and that will help to reduce the mill levy in our community and will reduce the need on those property tax, on the property taxes, and that'll help offset some of the increases that we see in our budget. Now, when I'm saying increases in our budget, that'll help offset raising the mill levy. But again, we really work hard to maintain a very fiscally responsible budget. I know you're saying stop, and I'm stopping. Thank you. She's over there waving the stop sign. So.
Don't get really started on budget talk.
I know. You got 2 minutes and you want to talk longer.
Thank you, Roy.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the pool. So, no, the budget process was the most educational piece for me as a commissioner. It is really, when you are looking at that budget and you're deciding on that budget, it is, what do I think the role of government should be, and how much weight behind that am I gonna put based on dollars? I mean, honestly, that's what it is. And I'm gonna disagree that it's not our job to go through this. The department heads are advocates for their department. They say, this is what I need to run my department to the optimum. And maybe that's this year, maybe that's, we deferred some purchases and those kind of things this year, and that's being responsible. But what we did was we went back to them and said, sorry, but you don't have this much money. Rework what you need for this year in this much money. I think that is our role as a commission. And then going back to that 30-year plan, 30,000-foot view, we have to say, this is worthy of our values, of what we think the role of government should be. And is capital investment still what capital investment was 20 years ago? Are we still going to invest in the same things we always have just because we always have, or does that change? And we can disagree on whether or not, public investment in housing is a worthy capital investment, whether that's a worthy role of government. I think that's a good discussion to have. That's a policy discussion to have. We are going to probably have to increase our line items for the airport across many things, especially if we build a new terminal. We're gonna have debt service. That's gonna increase the budget. We have to decide on the pool. If I had to tell you today what I think we should cut the chemical that we are spending on the pool. We should cut the labor that we are spending on the pool. We can run a facility that serves our community much more efficiently. And we will. And that's going to come with more debt service because we're going to have to bond out a new project. But in the long term, we're going to be able to cut some of those line items just on the maintenance and the ongoing provision of that service. Told you I'd work in the pool.
Thank you, Lindsay. Lisette, we're back to starting with you again here. As a commissioner, what would you support to promote sustainable economic growth as well as job creation and workforce retention in Garden City?
Job creation. I think as a commissioner, I would focus on small businesses and bringing businesses out here for our sales tax. I was recently in Ulysses for different organization, different things I was doing. Talked to 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, and I said, we're from Garden City. Do you guys go to Garden City? Every single little kid raised their hands up. So if we increase, for example, industry, small businesses, if we bring corporations out here, not only we will bring that tax revenue, sales tax revenue, from everybody else that shops here. That's what I definitely would focus on. Again, what was the other part? There's like 3 parts.
Promote sustainable economic growth as well as job creation and workforce retention.
I think, for example, trade jobs, electricians, plumbers, we need to focus on that, on bringing those people out here for more economic growth, for those houses, those contractors coming out. Job creations, Phoenix County Economic Development does a pretty good job reaching out to the high school kids and reaching out to the community and businesses on what kind of jobs, what kind of trade jobs we need. We need to push forward on our young people because those young people are going to be replacing us, whether candidates or commissioners, so we need to push forward for that. Again, bringing out businesses out here and being a regional hub for Southwest Kansas.
Thank you, Lisette. Manny,
You say the question again?
as a commissioner, what would you support to promote sustainable economic growth as well as job creation and workforce retention in Garden City?
Education is what comes to mind on my part. It's just the fact that we need certified construction workers, certified welders, certified teachers, certified nurses. And it boils down to, we don't have that option for our young professionals to gain access to. We do have the professionals here in town, But I think our support in gathering some sort of educational, whether it be in a certificate or whether it be in an actual accreditation, look at the Garden City Ammonia program. That's a great program. I think we need more like that. I think that would help support our professionals here in Garden City. I think that would also offer more employers to come to Garden City because we do have the professionals who are certified now and who are accredited with that education. So yeah, I think there's a lot to say there as far as the Garden City Community College is a great place to get your education. I've graduated from there. There's lots of great things. From there you can go anywhere. That's what they say, right? That's the motto. So, but I think also they can. That's one area where I think they also too have to get involved with some of that accreditation and some of that education. So there I go again with being able to bridge that gap with the community to try to bring everyone together, have everyone on the same page, teaching everybody. It's one of those things that I think I kind of dream about. I know it's hard to say for everybody to get along, but I think we can, so.
Thank you, Manny. Shannon?
Okay, well, for sustainable economic growth, we are in a good position that we actually have sustainable economic growth that we've been doing for the last 20 years. I was at the conference, the Kansas League Municipalities, and they said, how did you do it? What was the thing that made you decide as a city to really make it and go at it in industrial like the way we have? And really, if we look at what wake-up call we had with the Montfort fire when they didn't rebuild and how important it was for us to realize we needed to diversify. We need dairies, we need welding, we need all those different things. So part of that is to get diversity in our industry, and we're doing that, but continue to grow the diversity in the industry that we have. I would stick with the current incentives that we have. Well, we are foregoing a little bit of revenue now for a lot of revenue in the end. So the incentives that we have are working very well. I think we should plan out like we've done with the transload facility. That was a very good use of the city's land to turn over to TPNL to have them develop it. That was a very good use. For job creation, like Manny said, like we're all saying, trade jobs are huge. We need to make sure our kids know that trade jobs are not just good paying, they're honorable work. Those are the people that build our community, are the people with the trade jobs. So we need to encourage that. The partnerships that we have with the high school and the community college are great, are growing our own, where we're growing teachers inside the school district, where we have nurses that are getting their dual high school and college degrees at the same time and working at the ranch house. That's a great way for job creation. For retention, we need to work on housing affordability like everybody's talked about before. And also we need to work on childcare solutions, not just so parents can go work, but so we're also building the best children into the best adults that we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Roy?
Again, it goes back to economic development and growth. We've been on a good sustained course of attracting businesses to our community, and we need to continue to do that. We've worked through the city. We've actually had the Downtown Economic Development Fund to help grow our downtown and sustain our downtown. We still have funds for that to help with our downtown community. For what we do at Garden City High School is really working to grow our own through a number of areas. Through the academies that we have in our high school, where students can get certified in various areas. It's really growing our own here because they understand Garden City and they understand it's really location, location, location. Garden City's in the middle of nowhere, which is in the middle of somewhere, which is in the middle of everywhere, which is really in the middle of nowhere. So if we can really grow our own here and the people understand and the kids understand our community, and if we can keep them here, they come out and they get certified with various degrees. Yes, they can go on, and with technology it's great because through technology they can get their bachelor's and other degrees through technology. And hopefully through the quality of life issue, what we're trying to do is build a small urban area or a rural area to make it feel like an urban area so that hopefully, and I'm trying to do this with my family, is that if my kids leave, hopefully they can come back and work and live and raise a family of their own when they, in our community here, and that's really what I'm trying to do. And again, that brings professionals back into our community. But if, okay, I'm stopping. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. Lindsay?
Yeah, I think it's always, I took economics in college, and that was about the extent of my understanding of economics. And then when I started, I don't know, paying taxes for real, I started paying attention more about really what is the marker of a good economy? What is economic growth? And then I became a commissioner, and we talked about this constantly, and we throw this term around. What is economic growth? Well, how do we measure that? Do we look at just sales tax numbers? Do we look at job growth? Do we look at housing numbers? How many factors, and I know, Shannon, you could just tell me, but I do know these now. I've looked into this. And what is economic growth? And how do we sustain that? And how do we sustain that responsibly? And is all growth good growth? I think right now, if you look at the balance sheet, the growth and the incentives that we have, invested, have provided a good positive return for us in all of our areas. When we look at our employment rates, when we look at our sales tax numbers, when we look at our population growth, all of those things that say we have a healthy economy, it's there. Good choices have been made. I think that the key to that, though, is keeping a diverse industry, but also diverse look at how do we use those economic incentives? How do we continue to support businesses that are here? How do we bring new businesses in of all sizes, not just the 50-plus employers, but how do we encourage someone to start a new business when they're just out of high school and these kind of things? And how, as a commission, are we equitable in the incentives that we have and the tools that we have available to spread that around and make sure that everyone feels as though they're part of the economic engine, not just the new fancy plant in town or the newest retail store? And I think that goes back to those competing values about how we look at community, what we're using as markers and measures, and certainly there are the numbers, but then I think there's also community.
What the market in Garden City needs in order to grow our own workforce. And I do believe that that is one of the keys, is that we need to be able to grow our own workforce, starting with the high school. And I love the different academies, and one of the things that I appreciate the most about the high school is the fact that if you have an interest in something, you can take that course and you can start off working in that and working towards certification in that. So I think that is what's going to kind of continue to retain our workforce. I also believe that, again, it comes back to having access to quality childcare and housing. I mean, we need to be able to keep, because they can't find daycare. We also lose people because they can't find affordable housing. And so when you put all of those pieces together, I think it's, again, it's like a big puzzle, and that's just one of the things that works with it. And we all know that the market is here. We see the businesses coming. You can see the new construction. It's really exciting to drive down Kansas Avenue and see the dirt moving on the new project. And so I think having the incentives and the CIDs and the business incentive funds and all of that are great motivators. But I do think that we need to have, we need to grow our own, we need to have quality childcare, and we need to make sure that people have a place to live.
Thank you, Deb. That concludes the question and answer session of tonight's forum. Candidates, we'd like to thank you for your time and willingness to be a part of this event. And at this time, we will invite each candidate to provide a 2-minute closing statement. And we will start with Dr. Lindsay Burns.
Well, gosh, I am going to probably reiterate just what Deb said just now. On my 2 years on the commission, and I'm, still in the learning process, I think, but I do think that I have tried to be a voice for young families, professionals, and talking about the issues that affect me as a citizen, my neighbors, and my family. And just as what Deb just said, I think that issues that I've spoken to our childcare, spoken to the quality of life, but also the ability to maintain that quality of life and the affordability and those things. And she's right. When we talk about housing and we talk about childcare, those are kind of the bedrocks. Nobody's going to come and take a job if you don't have those kind of things. And to maintain a growing community, and as we look at the communities across Kansas, we have a young community, and that means children, and that means that even though they're not the voters, they are our constituents, and we have to consider our decisions with them in mind. And so I would hope, and I
Thank you, Lindsay. Deborah?
Well, very nervous